More than 12,000 Iranians were massacred in 48 hours. One murder every 14 seconds. With or without the world's help, the regime will fall.
Why has the mainstream media suddenly gone dark on Iran today? What are they hiding from you? Do not believe the silence for 1 second, because it is not peace. It is the terrified calm before total obliteration. A secret countdown to zero has begun deep inside Tehran. The regime is not just cracking, it is descending into total chaos. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi has just revealed the shocking truth that the mullahs are desperate to hide. He confirms that the Islamic Republic will collapse soon.
The regime will fall.
The wall of fear has shattered, and the streets are ready to explode. But here is the twist that makes this a global nightmare for our enemies. The real panic is actually in Moscow. Vladimir Putin knows that the USS Abraham Lincoln is parked offshore and ready to strike. If you want to see American steel crush this evil alliance, hit that like button right now to witness history. What triggered the total collapse right at this specific moment? It is the release of one single terrifying statistic that has destroyed the regime's narrative. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi has exposed the staggering truth that 12,000 Iranians have been lost in just the last 24 hours.
More than 12,000 Iranians were massacred in 48 hours.
Let that number sink in. 12,000 souls vanished in one single day. This confirms the horrifying metric that the regime is targeting a patriot every 14 seconds. This specific data point dropped like a seismic shock on the leadership, causing instant paralysis. We now have numerical proof of their absolute fear, because the White House confirmed that exactly 800 scheduled sentences were suddenly halted. Why did they stop 800 final verdicts? Because the generals are terrified of the 100,000 tons of American justice floating off their coast. The regime is now split into two opposing factions. One side wants to keep the pressure rising, while the other is freezing orders to save their own futures. The chain of command has hit 0% efficiency. We are watching a severe power struggle inside the palace, where commanders are blaming each other for the 12,000 lost lives, while the judiciary contradicts its own rulings. The numbers do not lie. While the old guard fights over who is to blame, Pahlavi is rallying the millions who are left. The countdown has reached zero, and the dictators are out of time. Now we must look at the hardware that is making the dictators in Tehran and Moscow wake up in a cold sweat. This is not about politics anymore. It is about physics and superior engineering. The arrival of the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group changes the entire calculus of the region. This is 100,000 tons of nuclear-powered diplomacy that can operate indefinitely without refueling. The crown jewel of this floating fortress is the air wing, specifically the F-35C Lightning II. This is not just a jet, it is a flying supercomputer. While the Iranian regime relies on rusty F-14 Tomcats left over from the 1970s, which are literally falling out of the sky due to lack of parts, the United States has deployed the most advanced fifth-generation stealth fighter in history. The F-35C has a radar cross-section the size of a golf ball. This means Iranian radar operators will not even see a blip on their screens before their entire air defense network is neutralized. But the dominance does not stop at the water's edge. Escorting the carrier are the Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. These ships are equipped with the Aegis combat system, which is capable of tracking over 100 targets simultaneously. They are loaded with Tomahawk land attack missiles sitting in vertical launch systems ready to fly. Compare this to the Russian and Iranian arsenal. Putin is desperate for Iranian Shahed drones, which are essentially flying lawnmowers made of plastic and cheap electronics. These slow and noisy targets are useless against the layered defense of a US carrier group. The technological gap here is not a gap, it is a canyon. Iran is trying to fight a 21st century war with museum pieces, while the US Navy is operating in the future. Let us wargame exactly how a tactical intervention would unfold if the order is given to support the collapsing regime or protect the people. It begins with electronic dominance. EA-18G Growlers would launch from the deck to jam Iranian communication and blind their Russian-made S-300 radar systems. They would effectively turn the lights out on the enemy command centers. Next, the F-35Cs would penetrate deep into hostile airspace completely undetected. Their target would not be the people, but the command and control bunkers of the Revolutionary Guard. Using precision-guided munitions, they would surgically dismantle the regime's ability to communicate. Meanwhile, high-altitude surveillance drones would relay real-time data to the destroyers below. If any remaining Iranian missile sites attempted to activate, the Aegis system would detect the heat signature instantly and neutralize the threat with a standard missile interceptor before it even cleared the horizon. This is the scenario that has halted the sentences. The regime knows that their Soviet-era bunkers cannot withstand modern American bunker busters. The technological checkmate is already in place. The USS Abraham Lincoln has turned the entire Persian Gulf into a parking lot for American air power, and there is absolutely nothing the crumbling regime or their Russian allies can do to stop it.
So here is the hard question for every true patriot watching right now.
We have the firepower sitting right there just miles off the coast. We have the best pilots and the absolute best technology in the history of warfare. With 12,000 innocent people already gone and the regime crumbling before our eyes, is it time to unleash the Abraham Lincoln to finish the job? Or should we stand back and wait? I want to know what you would do if you were the commander-in-chief today. Leave your orders in the comments below, because I read every single one of them. The massive shadow of the USS Abraham Lincoln looming off the coast has triggered a high-stakes poker game inside the Pentagon war rooms. Intelligence analysts are not just watching screens, they are tracking 3 specific classified timelines that are developing in real time. The silence you hear from Tehran today is not peace. It is the sound of a regime holding its breath before one of these 3 explosive files is opened. The first file is what insiders refer to as the Moscow Blackout. This is the scenario that has Vladimir Putin pacing the floors of the Kremlin. It is based on a simple but devastating logistical reality. The moment the regime in Tehran fractures the supply chain for the Shahed 136 drones is severed instantly. These are the autonomous flying devices that Russia relies on to target infrastructure in Ukraine. Without the constant flow of Iranian parts and technical advisors, the Russian drone fleet becomes nothing more than expensive plastic trash. Washington knows that a collapse in Iran is actually a checkmate in Europe. This is the geopolitical domino effect, where the fall of one dictator automatically pulls the plug on the other, creating a massive strategic victory for the West without a single American boot touching the ground. But there is a second file that is even more intriguing, because it involves a major shift at the highest level. We call this the Caesar Protocol. When the crushing weight of 12,000 vanished citizens meets the overwhelming firepower of the US Navy, loyalty becomes a very expensive liability. The generals of the Revolutionary Guard are not just commanders, they are billionaires who control vast business empires. They are looking at the supreme leader and seeing a sinking anchor that will drag their fortunes to the bottom. They are looking out at the Persian Gulf and seeing the F-35Cs ready to dismantle their assets. The theory here is that these generals will execute a soft coup to save themselves. They would force the leader out, blame him for the unrest, and offer his departure as a peace offering to the West. It is the classic move of self-preservation, where the regime sacrifices its own head to keep the body alive. However, the third file is the one that keeps commanders awake at night. This is the total fracture known as the broken arrow scenario. In this reality, the regular army, known as the Artesh, refuses to engage the people while the hardline guards refuse to surrender. The nation splits and the streets turn into a zone of conflict. This is the exact moment the USS Abraham Lincoln shifts from a silent observer to the ultimate enforcer. The mission would be to establish an impenetrable no-fly zone. Visualize American E-2D Hawkeye aircraft seizing control of the entire airspace, while squadrons of F-35s and F-18 patrols patrol the clouds. Their standing order would be simple. Any regime aircraft that takes off to target civilians is immediately neutralized. The goal is to suffocate the regime's air power and ground their forces, leaving them vulnerable to the opposition. We are standing on the razor edge of history. One of these 3 secret files is about to be opened.
The only question is, will the United States push the button to make it happen?
We must now confront the darkest reality of this crackdown, which goes beyond politics and touches the very soul of humanity. The most shocking intelligence provided by Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi reveals that the regime has crossed a line that no civilized government would ever dare to cross. They are no longer just patrolling the streets, they are violating the sanctuary of medicine.
Pahlavi explicitly exposed that security forces are now targeting the vulnerable inside hospitals.
Think about the level of inhumanity required to do that. Brave doctors and nurses are risking their own safety to hide injured patriots, but agents are raiding emergency rooms and seizing patients right from their beds before they can even receive treatment. A nurse in Karaj paid the ultimate price simply for trying to protect those under her care. This is a war against mercy itself. But the injustice does not stop there. We have received a heartbreaking testimony from a mother in Tehran that exposes the true nature of who is in charge. She recounted the devastating loss of her 15-year-old daughter. This young girl was not a soldier. She was not a political activist. She was simply a child trying to walk home. She was intercepted by the Basij forces, and she never made it back to her family.
The pain of losing a child is unimaginable. But what happened next is what should make every person watching this boil with rage. When families go to reclaim their loved ones who have vanished, they are often met with a final act of exploitation. Reports indicate that the authorities are demanding a financial fee before releasing the remains to the parents. They are literally forcing grieving fathers and mothers to pay for the return of the very children the system took away just so they can give them a proper farewell. This is a level of moral bankruptcy that is hard to comprehend.
They are turning tragedy into a business transaction. This is why the silence from Tehran is so loud. It is not because the people are content. It is because they are being held hostage by a system that has lost all humanity. These stories of the 15-year-old girl and the hospital raids are the fuel that is keeping the resistance alive. The people know that they are not just fighting for a new government, they are fighting for their dignity and the right to say goodbye to their loved ones without paying a fee to their oppressors. History has taught us one undeniable lesson, time and time again. No system built solely on fear and silence can hold back the tide of human dignity forever. We have talked about aircraft carriers and advanced missiles today, but the strongest weapon in this entire conflict is not made of steel. It is the unbreakable will of a mother who refuses to stay silent, and a father who demands a future for his child. The heavy silence hanging over Tehran right now is not the quiet of defeat. It is the deep breath taken before the dawn of liberty finally breaks. We who are sitting safely in our homes have a moral obligation not to look away. We cannot let these stories of courage vanish into the darkness of indifference. Your attention is the only thing that keeps their hope alive in the digital age. If you believe that freedom is a right that is non-negotiable, please hit that like button right now. That single click is your vote to help the algorithm push this truth out to millions more people who need to wake up. And make sure to subscribe to the channel because we will be right here with you the moment the next chapter of history is written. Thank you for choosing to stand on the side of truth.